and Drew's gaming retrospective for the week of November 11th, 2018. I'm your host, Drew, and I am joined by the one and the only Will.
What is going on, guys?
You know what? I realized as I said that, Will, that there probably isn't only one of you. Like, it's sort of
God, no.
Sort of a common name. So I got to come up with a better nickname for you next week. How the hell are you, man?
Oh, I'm great, man. I'm great. You know, another day, a little bit stressed, and you know, I think we know why. It was raining today, so that just means that everybody has to drive, you know, abnormally.
Yeah.
It's just the way it goes.
I have a pretty lengthy commute each day. I know you do as well. And like, maybe, I don't know, we're on opposite ends of the state, but maybe it's a little different where you are. Where I am, like when I'm driving back and forth and it's raining, like people stop driving. They just kind of like crawl.
They do.
And it's like, just slow it down, maybe like, 10 miles per hour.
Yeah. You know, and I feel like there's a lot of memes right now and a lot of people talking about why is traffic a thing? And if you think about it, like what really causes it? I mean, we know that sometimes it's just somebody on the side of the road, but I think a lot of times it's just for almost no reason. It's just rain or just people not driving well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason is just stupidity.
Yeah, we'll just go with that.
Well, unfortunately, we're not here to talk about stupidity. We're here to talk about video games.
We are.
I mean, sometimes stupidity is part of that, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, no, it absolutely is.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the list of topics today, and now that I think about it, there is some stupidity going on later on in the show. But I do want to just kind of see what you've been playing. I've been hearing you talk a lot about a brand new game that just came out, eh?
Oh, yeah. Red Dead Redemption 2. I mean, it's all the craze. Everyone's playing it. It's just a massive, massive game. And I know that we talked about this on the first episode, but I definitely wanted to talk about it a little bit more because it's been an interesting experience for me, for sure.
How much time have you put into it so far?
I mean, just kind of thinking about it off the top of my head, probably like maybe a couple hours, maybe 3 hours.
Okay. So you still got a long way to go.
Long way to go. Of course, it has one of those completion rate percentages that you can check at any time. And I'm like, probably like 4 or 5%, something ridiculously low.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just one of those kind of games where, it's not really hard to get into, but I think that the open world boredom, which we're going to talk about on this episode, definitely sets in very quickly. And there are certain aspects of the game that will pull you out of that, but it's kind of tricky how it works.
Well, I mean, how quickly do they throw you into the open world?
Not that quickly, actually. So, I mean, they kind of give you sort of an opening cinematic style where you're kind of going from cinematic to gameplay pretty seamlessly. But there's kind of a lot going on. They don't really explain everything that well. And in some ways, it actually kind of reminded me of... what is that Tarantino movie? One of the last ones he did where they go to the haberdashery in the wintertime.
Hateful Eight.
The Hateful Eight, yeah. So
I haven't seen that yet.
Good movie. Long and kind of a slow start, and I feel like that's kind of how this game was.
Okay, fair enough.
At least in the beginning.
A lot of people have been really diving into this head first, though, and Rockstar has that reputation of building these games that are really immersive. I mean, have you seen that to be the case here too?
What was that exactly, Drew? I'm sorry.
Have you seen that? Like, I mean, Rockstar has a reputation for building games that are like super immersive.
Sure.
Do you find yourself getting kind of immersed in this world?
I would say so. It takes a little bit of time because, like I said, the intro is kind of long and it's a little bit slow. But when they kind of throw you into the world and you kind of get a chance to roam around, then you definitely get immersed. And it's interesting because in the beginning you don't feel that way, but the more you kind of, walk around and start doing things and start doing, whether it's main missions or side quests or stuff at this kind of base camp, you start kind of losing track of time and you become part of the world.
It's interesting. I'm tempted to pick it up just because I kind of want to be part of the, the in crowd when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I just know deep down inside, I just don't have the time.
Yeah. Time is definitely a factor here. And I remember you had mentioned to me earlier that you haven't even played the first game, right?
I have not.
Now, was there a reason for that? Were you just not around, or was it still kind of the open world, sort of fear?
I mean, for me, with the first game, that came out on the original Xbox, if I recall correct.
Mm-hmm.
So,
PlayStation.
Oh, it was on PlayStation. All right.
Yep.
So I didn't have a PS2, but I did have the Xbox, and I kind of bought that system a little bit late in its life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So my games, the games I picked up for that system, are kind of all over the place. I don't know what it was particularly that steered me away from it. I'm just trying to. It just wasn't something I was even interested in, I guess.
Sure.
I don't know. It's hard to explain. I was never really a Grand Theft Auto person. You know, GTA 3.
Neither was I.
I never played that, and until it came out on the was on the Xbox. I think I finally played it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was the same way. I had really no knowledge of the first game. I might have seen some trailers or whatever back in the day. I mean, this was what, like 2010, I want to say it came out.
Yeah, let's hit the Googles here.
Yeah.
Redemption. And the first game. Yeah,
God
2010. Oh, it's a beautiful thing. 2010, May 21st, 2010. And I mean, I was never like really into the Western as a genre in any form of media, you know. I'm not really a big Western movie fan or Western TV fan. I respect it, but it was never my thing. So the idea of playing a game that was set in the Wild West really just never grabbed me. And then, just I don't know. That's about it. I really don't have any other excuses.
No, I think that's good enough, because I think a lot of people were in that same boat. You know, I think the Rockstar and GTA fans primarily were probably much more in tune with what this game was going to be about.
Yeah.
But for people like you and me that were kind of uninitiated, perhaps it just wasn't a high interest. And I got introduced to the game by my best friend. He was like, dude, you got to get this game. It's going to be, really good or whatever, and hyped it up. And I got it. And I think I went through like kind of a similar thing that I am now, where I'm like, like, I don't know where this is going to go. There's a lot to do. And for some people, they might hear that and be like, how is that like something that would deter you away from the game? There's so much to do. But I think, sometimes it's the complete opposite effect.
I know for me, that's certainly the case. I played GTA 4 when it came out. I bought it, within the first week or so.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun for a while. And then you're looking at a map in this essentially open world. I know some people call it an open world. Some people call it a sandbox game.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the term is kind of interchangeable, but basically you're set in a city and you can go anywhere and do anything. And you have maybe 5 missions that are open minimum that you're looking to complete. And I see that and I'm like, okay, well, the completionist in me has to do them all.
Yeah.
And as I'm going through and doing side mission 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on my way, before I get to the first part of the main quest, 6 or 7 more side missions open up. And now I'm looking at, all right, I got 15 side missions, 1 story mission. What the fuck do I do now? and that's kind of my problem with these types of games. And for me, it has to be a very specific set of circumstances to grab me, to make me work for it and go through it and get it done. And 9 times out of 10, that means it's in space and has lasers of some sort.
Oh God. Yeah, that's the Star Trek in Drew for you guys that don't really know.
Well, I mean, like Mass Effect isn't exactly a sandbox game, but it does have a lot of openness to it, and and
lasers.
And it's got plenty of lasers. That sounded a little sexy, right? I mean, it's got plenty of lasers, but they do have that main quest, and they have all these different side quests that you can complete at your leisure. But some of them have to be done before you go to the next part of the main quest. Otherwise, events get set in motion that prevent you from going back.
Right.
So for that, like, the completionist in me is like, yes, I have to do all of these things. But they also added a nice second layer where it benefits you to actually go out and do those side quests before proceeding, because it increases your standing with your crew and unlocks things that they can do that, they're not able to do initially. So you kind of have like this balance between like, okay, yes, we're setting you up to kind of get lost, but it's going to be worth it because it pays off in the end. And I was playing GTA 4. It's like, well, I can get a rocket launcher now, or I can get a rocket launcher an hour from now. I can still blow up the same cars. Why do I care about these side missions? Yet the OCD in me is like, complete the fucking side missions.
Yeah, it's quite the double-edged sword, I guess. I think that a lot of GTA people, even the hardcore fans, they would find themselves just kind of beating people up in the streets, and that was enough. That was enough for them.
Right. And I mean, you can make a case for that being, a sellable game right there. Just go around and beat people up,
Sure. People want that freedom.
I guess that's fun to some people, and I'm not going to knock anybody that does find it fun, but it's not for me.
Yeah. How long can you beat random pedestrians in the street with a baseball bat?
Right. And that's kind of what happened in the game. I looked at all the options I had, all the things I could do, and I chose to beat up a bunch of people instead, and I got bored of it.
Sure. Well, I think what separates Red Dead from GTA is that even though it has that, sort of classic Rockstar feel, and they have that sort of radar that I feel like they have in like every game, like Manhunt and all that stuff, because it's a Western feel and it's a Western time period, I think it really takes you out of the streets of GTA and puts you in something that's similar, but at the same time kind of different. And I think that's what draws me in.
Well, the game is
hype, of course.
The hype helps. Yeah. I mean, the game is gorgeous.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, last night was just an incredible experience for me. And all it takes sometimes is just a random visit to like a cliff. And, you kind of just find yourself wanting to stand there and take, 5 minutes just to kind of soak it all in.
So, I mean, what are some of the moments in that game that have just kind of stopped you in your tracks so far?
Well, one of them that I just kind of touched up on, I can talk about that more. There was not even really a side thing. I was in a town, and a lot of these games, you kind of just run into random people. And somebody kind of came up to me on a horse and said, "Oh, I recognize you from, so-and-so town." And your character just kind of says, "Wait, what? You shouldn't recognize me," or whatever. And I start chasing him on a horse, and we get to a cliff, and I guess he kind of panics. He jumps off the horse, and he is hanging off of this cliff, and I have to make this decision to either step on his hands and let him fall to his death or save him. And after I saved him, and we went through like a little bit of dialogue, that's where I kind of just stood there for a second. I was like, holy shit, like this is just this most astonishing like view right now, just from this kind of cliffside onto like just looking out onto the mountains and the trees. And, you get the sun, and just the way that they've designed this game. I mean, you get a lot of those scenes in a lot of other games, but they've really executed it in a very special way in this game. And I think it's just the attention to detail, and even just standing still and watching what Arthur does, whether it's fixing his hat or scratching his neck, things like that. There's a lot of detail and a lot of different things that happen, instead of him just kind of scratching his neck, 5 times the same way in 5 minutes. It's 5 different motions.
Right. I mean, that definitely helps, create the immersiveness.
It does.
Are you playing this on a PlayStation Pro?
I'm not. It makes me want to get one so I can play it on that and have that luxury of, HDR 4K, but I'm just not on that wagon yet because I don't have any 4K displays. Well,
I mean, I think Sony has done a really good job of pushing the system as it is. Like Horizon is absolutely gorgeous. And, I have a regular PS4, and it is connected to a 4K TV with HDR, and there's an HDR mode you could turn on in the game. But
there is.
But you don't need to have a PS Pro for it, which is kind of nice. And it does give you that extra little boost. And I mean, that game, to me at least, is just one of the best looking games I've ever played. And I see a lot of similarities in the landscapes between the two games. So like I kind of want to check Red Dead out because I know what the PlayStation is capable of visually, and I see these photos and everything, and I'm just like, "Ooh, that's pretty." Oh
yeah.
But then like I just found this article while you were talking. Excuse me. This is on Lifehacker, and they tell you how to play the game in quote unquote dad mode. I guess it's like the idea being that, you know, if you got little kids and they're watching you play the game, you want to try to avoid all the gruesome stuff. So like the first thing they say is to avoid all missions at all costs. And then they're telling you to play the mini games, and they're showing these guys playing poker, you know, and they're like, okay, now you can go hunting. And I'm like, or you can go fishing. You can pick flowers. And I'm like, all right,
some bad things there.
There's a lot of things there. Like I'm just looking at all these things you could do, and I'm like, this is my problem. This is why I can't play these games.
Yeah, and you're not even a father, for Christ's sake.
I'm not. I can just picture myself sitting down and playing poker. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll play 4 or 5 hands, and then I'll walk away, and that's not a lot of time. But now there's, you know, 15 minutes gone that I could have been playing one of the missions, and then I'm walking around. Oh, look, I can hunt this thing. Let me go hunt this thing. There's another 10 minutes gone. Oh, I can fish. Now there's another 10 minutes gone. Now my hour of gaming time is whittled away by bullshit.
Yep. It's like ADHD. It's like the equivalent of like, you know, what am I going to watch on Netflix, or am I just going to browse these titles for fucking 30 minutes and then go to bed?
Totally.
Because we've all been there. We're still there. And let me ask you this, Drew. This article that you read about, you know, dad things, did it require wearing New Balance shoes?
You know, it says something about moccasins.
Oh, God. Moccasins, I like to call them.
Oh, goodness. Now, to their credit.
Like a guaranteed laugh.
Yeah, that's a good one. Moccasins. I'm so disappointed. Moccasins. My moccasins have holes in them on the bottom. I went to go get a pizza. You know, we had delivery today, and like you said, it's pouring. And
you sack of shit. You're one of those people that goes outside with those things?
Well, I mean, I'm just going down the driveway. Why would I put on shoes to go down the driveway?
Fair enough.
But I ended up with soaked feet, so you win. So there's holes in the bottom of them or something.
Yeah, I mean, not to go off on a tangent, but I feel like the only time it's acceptable to wear those things out of the house is if they're the outdoor versions that actually have like the rubber and shit on the bottom.
Oh, yeah, these do.
Okay, good.
But they're cracked because they're shit, so...
Buy a new pair.
Yeah.
Stop being so cheap.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to buy all these games, man.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, what an expensive hobby.
How am I going to pay for the PS Classic if I don't buy moccasins?
Moccasins, Drew. Get it right.
Moccasins. How am I going to pay for moccasins? Oh, goodness. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add to the Red Dead discussion before we move on to our main topic?
Yeah, I mean, like, real quick, I just wanted to talk about something that I think we could probably get into for a second here, and that's kind of open world sandbox game boredom. And I think that some people might hear that and be like, I know exactly what he's talking about. And to the uninitiated, I think that some people might think, well, what is that? You know, what is this game boredom, you know, when you have a million things to do? Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's just that, you know, you have a million things to do. And I think sometimes that causes this effect of like, I'm bored because I don't know what to do. And you kind of waste that time and you go back to, you know, what am I going to watch on Netflix kind of syndrome. And I think it's a real thing. I mean, what do you think about this?
It is. I mean, it definitely is, you know, and it doesn't just extend to a game like Red Dead. I mean, even a game like Borderlands, you know, which I know a ton of people like absolutely loved. And, you know, I was playing it for a while and it was a lot of fun, but I don't know. I just found myself kind of
checking your phone.
Yeah. You know, like, all right, you know, I run back to the town. I go to get more missions, and then I endeavor out to complete these missions. And it's just like, all right, well, I can take like, I could do this mission or I could do that mission, but they're basically kind of the same mission. And, you know, there's all these other missions that are over in the other direction, and I keep unlocking stuff, but I'm just going back and forth, and I just feel like a courier boy and nothing is really happening. And then like, you know, I kind of ended up with a similar feeling in like Crackdown, which I didn't really get into as much as I would have liked to. But it was kind of a similar thing. You know, they give you all these things to do, and it's like instead of completing these missions, I'm just mindlessly jumping around looking for orbs. Yeah, and then I'm bored of the orbs.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't think that has anything to do with like an attention span thing. I think it's just more of how some of these games are designed. There's a lack of focus, and I think that's there for a reason, because that's why it's open world. You know, they want to give you that freedom of doing a bunch of things, but there should be a little bit more streamlined direction, perhaps. And I don't know if I'm asking for too much, but I think sometimes, you know, we need that.
One of my favorite genres of video games is RPGs. You know, the first role playing game I ever played on a console was Final Fantasy VII, and I know that may not.
God, yeah.
It might not be the best, but it's my favorite for a number of reasons, mostly because it's the first one I ever played. Right. And I've gone on to play some of the other Final Fantasy games. I've played, a bunch of the Dreamcast RPGs. I've gone backwards, to the older stuff as well too. So I feel like I have a pretty good sampling of RPGs across a whole landscape of consoles. And what I find is if the story is too open, with too many side quests, it is difficult for me to stay engaged with the game.
Indeed.
One of my favorite Final Fantasies, and this is going to get me some shit, was actually Final Fantasy 13. And hear me out, because I understand the game is flawed in a lot of ways. It's, maybe not one of the best Final Fantasies, but the linearity of it is what I really enjoyed about that game, because there wasn't a ton of side quests. It was very much, go through this town, complete this objective, move on to the next place, complete this objective. And it kept you on a path while telling the story. Yeah. And by keeping me on this narrow path and waiting until almost the end of the game to blow it open, I think Square did a great job of giving players a focused story that can keep them engaged.
Sure. And it kind of kept that open world presence, I'm assuming, as well.
Right. I mean, I felt like I was constantly making progress without having to grind to level up. It's like, I know that's part of one of the deals when you play an RPG. Like you get a weapon, you get a magic spell, blah, blah, blah. You go to fight this boss, the boss obliterates you. All right. So now I got to go grind my levels. I have the stuff I need. Now I just need to build my strength and my health up to that point where I can take this boss out. So let me spend an hour just fighting random monsters so I can build that strength up. Like, I get that. That's part of the deal. But there's a way around that. And I think 13 did a great job of bypassing that and just keeping you moving forward. Yes, there was some grinding, but it was never essential to the plot. It was never essential to the story. And I always felt like I had forward momentum.
That's cool, man. I don't think I ever played that game, and I'm having a hard time thinking about which iteration this is, because I mean, obviously, most people know there's fucking 20 Final Fantasies at this point. So this is the one. This was on the 360 and the PS3. Okay. And it had Lightning. Remember Lightning? It was the woman as the main character. Yeah, vaguely.
She kind of had silverish armor, silver white hair, a sword. I'm trying to remember.
Sephiroth, but just female.
Kinda, yeah. And she was fairly badass too. So like Sephiroth, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was good. They actually made a sequel, which is, well, I guess it's a sequel. It's like a side story. It talks about her sister, who's also in the game. And I started playing that, and I just, I don't know what happened.
Life gets in the way, and more importantly, more games and other games get in the way.
Yeah. I mean, I've kind of resigned myself to being what I call like a patient gamer or a bargain gamer at this point. Yeah. It has to be a truly special game for me to buy it on release day. So I will wait for games to drop in price, because if it's a single player game, the story is never going to go bad.
No.
I don't have to worry about being day one on the servers to play the multiplayer games that I suck at anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Tell me about it. I mean, without going off into a big Final Fantasy tangent, I mean, I know that I'm going to get shit for saying that I still haven't even beaten 7.
Yeah, we got to talk about that, buddy.
We do. It's bad. It's real bad. I mean, I've started that game, I don't know how many times, and it's been a sort of cycle of losing a save file, accidentally deleting one, trading in a PS3, and then getting another one. There's always been a reason for it. Yeah. But I think at this point, there are so many ways that I can play this game, whether it's on PS4 with the HD, remaster thing, not the remake, but the remaster. And then I actually have it on PS1 Classic. I actually have the physical game that I can play on PS3. So I really have no excuse to not play it and beat it at this point.
Yeah, plus it's going to be on the Classic when that comes out too.
That's right.
If you end up picking one up, and if I'm not mistaken, Square is pushing that game onto the Xbox One and the Switch when they start releasing all their. They're doing like this. I don't remember the details. They announced this a couple months ago, but they're going to be pushing a bunch of Final Fantasy games out to the Switch and to the Xbox.
Do you have a Switch, Drew?
I do not.
Are you thinking about getting one?
I've wanted one since launch, but it's just been a matter of funds, mostly, and then time.
Yeah, time once again. But I mean, I can say as a new Switch owner, I think that a lot of those games, especially FF7, oh my God, it's going to look so good on it.
And the thing is, like, I don't know if it's just nostalgia that's kicking in when I play Final Fantasy 7, but like if I throw it in right now, and like that game, to me, it's there's something magical about it where it just grabs you right from the get-go.
Very.
The plot creates a sense of urgency almost immediately. And it just sucks you in.
It does. So, I mean, the fact that you're basically, doing this, you're getting off this train and you're basically thrown into a battle almost immediately. Maybe that's the kind of thing that more of these open world games need to do. I think so. We need to be thrown into something instead of dealing with like kind of a weird cinematic where you're kind of playing and then you're not playing and then you're playing and
that drives me crazy.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like what I was talking about with RDR2. Trust me, it's good and the intro is good, but
no, I think now that you mention it, like there's nothing that turns me off on a game more than just taking an hour and a half to install the fucking thing and then sitting down and watching a 30-minute cinematic before I can start playing. Yeah, I mean I don't really recall that with this game. Metal Gear, that's another story that we'll have to talk about at a different time. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan as well. And I think a lot of people aren't. They just kind of want to pick up and play and they don't mind the cinematic, but keep it short, keep it sweet. And, let's move on. Right. Exactly. Yeah, let's shift into our next topic for the night now. Sure. We talked briefly about the PS Classic last week. And since then, there's actually been some. So I guess Kotaku had an opportunity to actually go and try one out at Sony's headquarters, and the feedback that they provided was not all that great. Yeah, I heard about that. I mean, we kind of read this article briefly, and we looked at some Reddit comments. Yeah. So I mean, the general gist of it is the games play fine. But this is very much a bare bones experience. Really? The menus are clunky. There's not a lot of ability to have multiple saves and things like that. When you stack it up against the Nintendo's offerings in this space, it seems like Sony kind of took the cheaper way out. Yeah, it seems that way. I mean, based on what I read, it just seems kind of disappointing. I mean, if you compare it to... I mean, you have the mini SNES, right? Yes, and the Nintendo as well. Okay, so I don't have the Nintendo, but I'm assuming the Nintendo interface is very similar to how well done the SNES interface is. It's identical in every way except for the music. Okay. So there's a lack of music? No, it's just different music. Oh, okay. But I mean, like you still have like each game has 4 save slots and, it's the same menu system, same layout. All the same visual options, it's consistent and it's nice. It's classy feeling. It's smooth. It's responsive. So you enjoyed what they did with those 2 minis then? I think for what they are, I think they did a very solid job of presenting a professional product. Sure. I know there are people that don't like the game selection. Mm-hmm. And there are people that have modded their systems and put literally all of the games on them. And that's fine. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. That's a whole nother discussion. If we're talking about the presentation of the items themselves, the controller lengths were a little short, actually really short. But I think once you're in the system, in the menus and everything, I think it was fine. The only downside to me was that you had to physically press the reset button to get out into the next game.
Oh yeah, I feel like is that a thing with the mini SNES? Because I feel like there's another way that maybe I just don't know about.
If you pick up one of the 8-bit DOE wireless controllers, which are compatible with the system, you can use select and start to get you back to the menu. But with the standard controllers that it comes with, unfortunately, you do have to hit the reset button.
Yeah, I mean, not a huge thing. It's not like a game breaker.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on your setup. For me, so we ended up buying the extension cords for the controller wires.
Oh, you did?
And they're long. Like I thought they were only 6 feet. I think they're closer to 10.
Are those official?
No, these were not.
Okay.
These were not. They I'm not sure if they make official ones.
Probably not.
I have all official controllers for both the NES and the Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
But for the controller wires, and the nice thing is that the wire actually works with both systems because the plug is the same on both systems.
Oh, that's nice.
So, yeah, so I can sit on myself, and now I probably have about, let's see here, the rug's an 8x11, and I still got a couple feet to spare. I'm going to say I got about 15 feet between myself and the TV.
Right? Like, hang on a second. How do you even know your rug size?
I used to sell rugs.
Oh yeah. I stand corrected, Drew. Jesus.
True story.
That's like saying that it's like, I mean, I've never heard anybody say that in my life. Yeah, my rug's 8x11. So let's see, if I do the math, it's like, what?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure you could probably, look at somebody and say like, oh yeah, you probably wear like a 17 coat. And I don't even know if that's a thing.
Well, close enough. I got what you're saying, but I could definitely do that.
Yeah. See, so, yeah. So anyway, so I'm about, yeah. You're in an industry. You just kind of figure things out. And after a while, you don't need to measure them. You know what you have,
The 17 coat. I'm going to have to tell my guys about that. That's going to be a good laugh.
I don't even know what size that is. Maybe it's small.
You don't want to know. It's more of a neck size for a shirt. Let's just say that.
Ooh, okay.
Or it would be like a boy's suit jacket, because that's technically a size. But anyways.
All right. So, all right. If I'm sitting, a rug and a half away from my TV.
There we go.
If I'm sitting a rug and a half away from my TV and I want to change the game, I have to get my fat ass off the sofa, walk over to the television where the system is, hit the reset button. Now, let's say I'm picking a game, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure what game I want to pick. Do I stand there and go through it and pick and then decide, after a minute or two of playing, I don't really want to play that one after all? Or do I sit back down and commit? And I understand this is first world problems because back in 1992, when these systems came out, you fucking picked and committed.
That's it, man. That's it.
But in today's age, we're all spoiled because we can press a button and go back to a dashboard like that,
instantly.
Or like I have a RetroPie that I built and that has hotkeys on it where I can press select and start and boom, I'm back at the dashboard. So now we're stuck in this kind of weird spot where you have systems that are new but old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just it's a little weird. Anyway, I don't know how I got on that tangent, but yes, the PlayStation Classic has that.
That's how we got there.
It has that feature.
Yeah. No, but you're right. It's a pain in the ass. Like, depending on your setup, it makes it a pain in the ass, or it could potentially make it a pain in the ass.
Right.
I mean, I'm lucky where I've moved it to my desk. And as you know, I kind of have like a more of a desk setup because for me, it's easier and that's what I prefer.
Yeah. So it's an arm length away.
Yeah. Not, 8x5x11 rug length away. You got to get up and show your ass crack to Nikki and just kind of be like, yeah, just hang on 1 second while I just pick the game, all right?
Yeah. Oh, goodness. But yeah, I mean, that's first world problems, huh?
No, you're right, man. It's the plague of the new old systems.
Yeah. Just give me a hotkey.
Yeah, something.
That Kotaku article also talks about some other issues with the thing too. I guess there's some games that actually look better being played through a CRT, and that might sound like, well, duh, these games were designed for a CRT TV, but when you're building when you have a system that's meant to be plugged into an HD display, you would think that it would be optimized to some degree, and I guess it's not.
You're right. And I think there's, again, that's kind of like a double-edged sword. I think that people need to be realistic about what these things are. They're not meant for, they're designed for, HDMI cables and for new, next gen or current gen TV, sure. But they're also not going to look like, perfect sprite, just perfect polygonal games, whether we're talking about the SNES or the NES or even the PSX that's coming up. Like, they're going to look better, but I think that that's where we need to leave it. They're going to look better.
Right. I mean, they're not remasters.
No, they're not. They're just kind of ported to this thing. I don't know how they do it. But either way, I think that it's more about the package, and it's more about the fact that they're re-releasing these things with legit controllers. They're smaller, and they're cool, man. They're just cool.
So, I mean, on the top of the controllers, excuse me, the controllers themselves apparently are, identical to the original PlayStation 1 controllers. They're not DualShocks, which, we touched on last week. And that's disappointing. I think that's a missed opportunity in a lot of ways, especially with a game like Metal Gear. But, that being said, most of the games on here aren't really, they weren't built with the DualShock in mind. So I don't think it's necessarily a huge deal. Like, I never played Twisted Metal 2 with a DualShock. I played it with a D-pad. And I know that's not one of the, I think the first Twisted Metal is on the list, not two, but point being is like, we can play these, with the D-pad. It's just when you have a game like Metal Gear where it's so integral to the experience, I think it's a missed opportunity.
I agree.
The other thing too is, so the system has a save anywhere feature, very similar to what the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo has, right?
Okay.
Where you can hit the reset button and it'll bring up a menu where you can save your game in one of those 4 slots. That's like basically you could be in the middle of a match of Street Fighter and save it.
That's awesome.
That will save it literally will save in the middle of anything. Try it out later when you get an opportunity.
Yeah, I'll have to.
And then the games themselves have, their own save slots as well too. So if you're playing a game like, I'm trying to remember, Final Fantasy 6 is on there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe it's 6
I think they call it 3 in this case. But that game has its own save slots. So you could do it one of 2 different ways. You could push for the save and save in the save slot and it wouldn't affect anything. Or you can just say like, oh, I got to go to work. Let me just pause it here and I'll do a save anywhere. And bam. So you just come back to Classic has a very similar feature where you could just kind of, you press the reset button and it gives you a save slot, but it only gives you one of those save slots. Instead of the 4 like the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo give you. If you're playing a game like FF7, for example, you could still make it to a save point, save it, and it'll still show, like it would in the normal system. But if you like in the middle of a fight against, Bahamut Zero, you're like, ah, shit, I got to go to work. You only get one save spot, for that. So I think that's a little bit disappointing.
That's something that I need to, I think, just be more educated on, because I'm just not even that familiar with how the mini SNES works in terms of saving. I mean, I know you talked about it a little bit, but even just with that, I had my wife, buy me a copy of that thing. It was like, I think 1 or 2 left. I think you actually helped me find out where it was, and she picked it up for me.
Nice.
And I loaded it up. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Drew.
You got it, man.
And thanks, Lauren. But either way, like, I remember we hooked it up and we played for, 10, 15 minutes. She got pissed, because the games are hard. And I think we were playing like Donkey Kong Country, and she's like, yeah, like, this is just not the same. And like, we were playing Mario Kart, and we're used to playing on the Wii U. And long story short, we just didn't really even know how to save anything. I just kind of shut it down, and then it just got stowed away for a while. So again, I'm not really that familiar with how these mini systems save, but it's definitely going to be worth a read, and it's interesting to hear about, how the PSX Classic is going to work.
I think they did a decent job of trying to address the convenience factor. You know what I mean? Because most of the people that are buying these are people our age with jobs, responsibilities, children, and whatever. And sometimes, you might think, all right, I'm home from work, just cracked open a beer. I got time to myself. I'm going to play this game. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to play Final Fantasy VII. I'm going to make it up to the first save point, and then I'm going to go to bed. Yeah. And then I don't have children, but maybe somebody who's just said that does. And then their kid wakes up and throws up all over the floor. Or like my cat pukes. Maybe Dax just went and threw up on the floor. And now
cats are like children.
Don't even get me started. So now I gotta pause my game. I go and clean that up, and then by the time I'm done with that, and then I get distracted by something else, and then I look at the clock, and it's like 11 o'clock. I'm like, shit, I gotta get up in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So let me quick save.
Exactly.
And that's where the convenience of it comes in.
That's good. We definitely need that. Being the kind of weekend warrior, being the adults that we are, we need something that's convenient, quick, easy.
Sir, I would prefer not to be called an adult. Thank you very much.
Just want to ignore that factor of my life that's 100% a reality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, so overall, we're looking at essentially a very bare bones experience. And it's
kind of a shame, I guess.
It is, because I feel like I look at the interface on the PlayStation 3, and while it was clunky, I think it was good looking, right? I think it was a very attractive display. And then I look at the display on the PlayStation 4, and I think they did a great job of taking the PS3 to the next level. And when I say display, I mean the dashboard, right?
Yeah, the interface.
The dashboard on the PS4 is just gorgeous. I mean, it's really absolutely gorgeous. It's a little tough for me to find things sometimes, but I think they did a good job overall.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at this, animated GIF of the PlayStation Classic on the Kotaku article. And yeah, it's a little clunky because it's not a video, but I mean, this is really very bare bones. And I think I was expecting something at least similar to the PS4.
Sure.
And it's not even close to that.
Yeah, it's, before I forget, Drew, I noticed that you said GIF. Are we talking about the peanut? Are we talking about the peanut butter? Or are we talking about a GIF here, right? Can we have this argument real quick?
No.
Maybe another episode.
No.
People know what I'm talking about here, and there's going to be
some. I need a drink. Anyway, yeah, it's disappointing.
Yeah, I think kind of like the way that we can wrap this up, in terms of that interface is, I feel like they've probably had plenty of time to make this a little bit more special. And I agree. I think that they've gone with more of a bare bones approach. And you know what? Maybe we'll just get over it. Maybe we'll just enjoy the games, and that'll be enough. And people will kind of respect the fact that, they have a miniature, PS1. I mean, can we just talk about how good this thing looks, though? I mean, I saw some HD pictures. It does look good. Yeah.
I mean, it's truly a mini PS1. I don't know how else to put it, but I mean, like, it looks gorgeous. I mean, the original. You have to be a fan of the original original console to appreciate it fully. But I mean, I think they did a great job with it.
Yeah, because these mini consoles, they're literally proportionally perfect from what I can see.
Yeah. I mean, all the consoles have been pretty much spot on with that. Within reason. I don't expect the disc tray on this to pop open.
Yeah, and some people expect that too. I don't know if you saw that in the Reddit comments, but there were some people that are like, I just don't understand why we can't have a lid that pops open so I can play the PS1 game. It's like, you know what, dude? Like, maybe you're asking for too much at this point. If you want that, get the PS1 original for like, I don't know, $30 to $60 at your local retro shop and dude, just call it a day.
I fucking seen them at Goodwill for $15.
There you go. There's no excuse.
It's not hard to find a PS1. Not even a little bit. And if you really want to do it right, get yourself a PlayStation 3, because then you can play twice as many games.
Exactly. And they have the internal like memory card on that thing as well, which a lot of people don't even know about.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there was a miniature PS1 that came out with that screen built in, right?
So the screen wasn't built in. It was an attachment, but it was
that's right.
It was designed for that specific system.
Yeah, just fucking buy that.
That's actually pretty hard to find, from what I understand. Finding a screen that's in good condition and finding the mini, the PS1 mini, I think they called it.
You know what's funny about this, Drew, is as soon as I said, just fucking buy that, immediately I feel like I just put the system in my mouth, and I was just like, I just had this image in my mind of like an eBay advertisement for $400 for this thing.
Well, I mean, let's look it up. What's eBay say? Let's see.
Do it.
eBay.com.
What was this thing called? Was it called just like a PS1 mini?
PS1, I'm pretty sure it was.
Because I feel like if you type that in, it's going to be somebody that has like this bootleg copy of this new classic that's coming out.
It's not. Yeah, it's the one. It's the one you're looking for. Because here's
on this thing.
So here's somebody selling it for $61.33. It does not include the screen, but so the stylized way to say it is PS1 ONE.
That's right. Yes, they did have like a weird like font to it as well, I believe.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm looking at some listings here, $47. Here's somebody that's selling it with the screen, $150 best offer.
So, I mean, depending on who you talk to, I guess it's kind of pricey. I think for somebody like potentially me or you, we might be like, okay, like kind of, get behind that. But I mean, it is kind of hard to justify that price. Yeah.
I mean, here's another one, $100.
Okay.
But they have, $10 shipping on it. It's like for me, like that was always a novelty. Like the idea of having the PlayStation 1 with the screen was really cool. And by all accounts, it was a good quality screen, especially when it came out. LCDs were kind of new to the home market for these types of things. But
yeah, no offense to anybody that lives in like fucking Iowa or anything like that, but like a lot of these items are always coming from like a weird, obscure state that like no one ever wants to go to ever.
Yeah.
Because when I bought all that stuff, like for the retro game day, a lot of that stuff was coming from like, I don't know, like Ohio and like just weird parts of the country, like Oregon, I think is where I got my Dreamcast. Like,
really?
Why is this Dreamcast in Oregon?
Well, Oregon at least makes sense because it's on the West Coast. Like I can understand that because the gaming scene on the West Coast is very Japanese.
I suppose you're right.
But like, who the hell's going to import, Marvel versus Capcom in Nebraska?
Well, that's exactly it. And I just feel like some of those states that you just don't hear about very often have what you're looking for. And you know what? Fine. That's who cares? Right. So what do we have left to talk about, Drew? I don't know. I lost track. I mean, I think we've covered the PS Classic. I think we've kind of advised. Yeah, I mean, there's kind of a quick segue into our last topic, which we kind of dipped in and out of anyway. This whole thing, this PlayStation Classic's actually running off of an open source emulator called PCSX Rearmed. We almost forgot to talk about that. That's important. It is, and I think it brings up a very good question. This is the debate that's begins and ends all debates in the video game community. I think so. Emulation versus original hardware. Yeah, I mean, what a topic, man. Like you said, we touched up on it when I talked about game day, and I don't even know where to start. How do you start with this, Drew? Well, I think I have a unique perspective on it. I was very much anti-emulation for a very long time, right? And now I'm both. I'm for original hardware. I'm for emulation. Interesting. I have I collect for a TurboGrafx 16. All right, I grew up with a TurboGrafx 16. Most of the games I own, I bought when I was a child. I took good care of them. I kept them over the years. And then when I finally got old enough to buy or to rent my own apartment, I decided, well, I'm going to start collecting for the system again. Sure. Some of the games are fucking outrageous. Now, are we talking about price or just the game itself or both? Well, yes. Okay. Let's go with mostly price. So there's a game
for the TurboGrafx called Magical Chase, right? Do you still have eBay open?
I don't. I actually never had it open, Drew. I don't know why you're assuming things about me, but
right.
I can go ahead and change that.
You've disappointed me and you've ruined my life forever, but go ahead and open eBay.
Drew, I haven't even hit enter yet. Okay, we're there.
All right. Go up to the search bar at the top.
Okay.
Type in M.
Yep.
A. Jickle. Magical.
What? Oh, Jesus Christ.
Magical Chase.
It's like you're giving your email address. You're like, it's MA69raw@AOL.com.
Oh, goodness.
So it's magical what?
Magical Chase.
Okay, can I just say that magical butter machine was the first thing to come up? Like, what is that?
I want to know.
I want to go back and like research this. Okay, yeah, magical chase.
We'll bookmark that for later.
I'm looking at, is it the PC Engine 1993?
So PC Engine
$575.
PC Engine is the Japanese version of the TurboGrafx, and generally speaking, the games are cheaper on the PC Engine than they are on the TurboGrafx.
Because there's nothing cheap about $575.
Scroll down a little further, please.
Okay. Am I scrolling down on this advertisement, or am I going back and am I
just go to the TurboGrafx 16 box?
Okay. Oh my God.
Yeah.
We're looking at the $15,000 one that 16 people are watching because they're all maniacs.
Right. So, I mean, first of all, like, let's just say that there is no video game in the world that is worth $15,000.
No.
If you spend right. Like, that's absurd. I consider myself a collector. I would not pay that. Even if I had the money, I would not pay that for a game.
Drew, what is $15,000? Like, just off the top of your head? A used car?
Yeah. That's more than I owe on my car.
I mean, I hate to kind of use that example because I feel like anytime you get into like this kind of bracket of figures, people just automatically go to, oh yeah, all this, like, that's like buying a car. But like, is there anything else that? But it is. But there's no denying that. But is there anything else that's $15,000 that we could just use as a reference here? Debt.
Yeah.
I mean, thank God I don't have that much. But like,
yeah,
goddamn.
Yeah.
I just can't think of anything else. Like maybe that's why everybody just says like, oh, it's like buying a car. Like maybe that's where that comes from.
Well, I think anytime you're looking at something that's between $10,000 and $30,000, I think a car is probably the most specific thing because like 15,000, like I can't think of like a single object as 15,000. I can think of
not a single object. Maybe like an IKEA kitchen.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Half of it, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go with that.
So now that we have a price point on this atrociously overpriced game, are you familiar with the genre called Cute 'em up?
No.
All right. You're familiar with shoot 'em ups?
Yes.
Okay. Imagine taking all the enemies in this badass shoot 'em up and turning them into stars and cupcakes and fairies and little cute witches on brooms.
Okay, I'm at a loss, Drew. I don't know if I want to eat a cupcake or just keep listening.
Right. So that's how like the genre, and this is more popular for some reason on the TurboGrafx, but Cute 'em ups are pretty popular on the PC Engine and the TG16. And this game is considered to be one of the most expensive, one of the most rare games on it. I will never ever play that game on a real copy. It's just never going to happen. And there are other games that are like, I really don't particularly have an interest in playing Magical Chase just based on the premise.
Mm-hmm.
But there are other games for the system that are not quite as expensive, but in that ballpark.
Jesus.
I'll never play them. It's just, the reality is I'll just never have that opportunity to buy them. It's just not going to happen.
Can you just imagine if there was like some kind of like payment plan for this?
You never pay it off.
You're like, dude, I can't go to the movies, man. I got to make another payment on Magical Chase.
Do you know, like, can you imagine what our friends would do to me?
Oh, God.
They'd smack the shit out of me.
Not only that, but you would just never live this down, man. Like,
I wouldn't.
And like, good luck trying to get out of it too. Like, cause like the guy would just be like, nope, final sale. Like you're in, that's it.
Right. Exactly.
My
So
God.
when I had this come to Jesus meeting, you know, that's when I realized it's like, all right, maybe emulation isn't all bad.
Mhm.
Because, and then I started looking at it from a perspective of preservation of games too.
Sure.
We have a lot of games that are on physical media that just will stop working at some point or another.
This is true.
Right? Like it's not even a maybe or an if. Like this product will cease to exist.
And sometimes it's software, hardware, or both.
Right. The Dreamcast, I'm terrified of because those discs are notorious for having disc rot.
Yes, I mean we all know what happened. Well, maybe we don't all know what happened with my copy of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, but
yeah, I mean you just didn't clean it.
I didn't fucking clean it. No.
Right.
I had some other guy clean it with his fucking T-shirt in the store, so we'll just leave it at that.
I would have jumped across that counter.
Oh God.
So, I mean, imagine one day though you go to play that game and it doesn't work, and then you go to look at it to see if it's dirty, and like parts of the disc have just fallen apart. You know, the disc is just starting to rot away. It could happen. It will happen. It will happen sooner or later. It's just a matter of time. You know, so now you have all these games that we've invested time, money into, and unless somebody burns them and makes a digital file out of them, they will be lost to the ravages of time.
I think you're right, and this is just, I think, explaining why the OG hardware route is dangerous.
It is, and like I mean, I'm obsessed with playing stuff on the original hardware, you know, and I know you are too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about it. It's more than just nostalgia. Like this is how the games were meant to be played.
Yes, you're being faithful to the games. You're being faithful to everything from the hardware to the developers and all of that. And it's really hard to, well, I mean, you can't mess that up. You know, emulation, that's where you kind of you're kind of trickling into the world of, is this going to run the way that I want it to? Is it going to be arcade perfect? All this nonsense, and good luck trying to get it to run properly.
Right. Right. I mean, it can be, you know, a very daunting task trying to get something to run in MAME. And there's other ways of running those games. Some of them are easier than others. Some of them are more accurate than others.
Mm-hmm.
And then you always run the risk of downloading a game that's just not what you thought it was. Like I downloaded a ROM of an Atari game called Yar's Revenge. And what it was is Yar's Revenge, but with somebody's ROM hack laid over it. So all the enemies were different. All the icons were different. And then I went into another game, and I don't remember which one it was, but it was the same kind of shit. It's like it's still the same game, but it's not the same game.
Yeah.
And that kind of bothers me. So if you could find a quality ROM or a good copy of something, it's worth holding on to. Of course, you're now running into the legalities of the situation. Ideally, you will want to have a copy of your own to play,
Yes.
a hard copy. But the reality of the situation is this: we all, at one point or another in our lives, with very few exceptions, I would say, have pirated something.
100%.
I think I know one person that might not have.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm not naming names, but he knows who he is. So, but outside,
have him on the cast, Drew.
Hopefully, yes.
Okay.
But that said, I don't know where I was going with this. I just trailed off. But anyway,
I mean, you were talking about how people, there are some people that just, haven't, and that person we might have on. And then you were also talking about, how a lot of these downloaded emulation ROMs can be really tricky. So I don't know if you were kind of going in a direction there, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of like, if you find something that is good, like hold on to it, make your backups of it and keep it. But don't be afraid to look at it as curating, I think, too. Because we're getting a lot of sites that are getting shut down. Emu Paradise gets shut down and Nintendo's giving them cease and desist. And I get it. Like, these companies are in business. They're trying to make money. They're trying to sustain themselves. They're trying to pay their staff, their developers, all these people. But like, when you're given a cease and desist on a company who's supplying games that are 30 years old. I don't know. I kind of have a rough time with that.
Yeah, it's a subject that we're definitely going to have to talk about on another episode when it comes to, kind of game piracy. Is it fair? Is it justifiable? What do people do? What do people think? And I think that emulation kind of falls into that a little bit.
Yeah, it does. And of course, if anybody has any comments on this topic as well, too, we want to hear from you.
Yes.
So as soon as we get our social media set up, let us know.
Finally, we got a name, Drew. We got a name. So.
We got a name. Yeah. I mean, we just decided on it like 10 minutes before we recorded. So
that's how it goes. But we're there. We're making strides.
So, I mean, that pretty much brings us to the end of the episode. Did you have any other topics that we missed that you want to hit on real quick?
I don't think so, man. I think that we covered a lot. I really hope that people kind of, like you said, leave some comments. Let us know what you think about what we talked about. And, we're very open to that.
Yeah. I mean, leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you download the show. And, Will, if somebody wants to yell at you and tell you that Red Dead sucks, how can they reach you?
Sure. So on pretty much all platforms except for Facebook, it's going to be Will_Gear. That's Gear. So that's Will_Gear, just kind of like Metal Gear, but just Will. And that's going to be Twitter and Instagram as well.
And you can find me on both Twitter and Instagram at ScionStorm. That's where I post cat pictures and.
I always thought it was Poison Storm.
Oh, fuck you.
You're like, that's like the 55th time I've heard that.
Yeah. You're that guy.
Yeah, I'm that guy.
You're that guy. No, seriously, though, you didn't think it was, did you?
I did. I'm
really?
Sorry. I really did. All this time.
Have you ever played StarCraft?
No.
Get the fuck out of here.
I can't, man. I mean, that's one of those, like, is that considered like an RTS game?
It is.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I can do that.
Once upon a time, I was actually good at StarCraft, and that's where the name comes from. And it just kind of stuck. So, anywho, thanks everybody for listening. We hope to see you around next week. And, like I said before, chime in on any thoughts that you have on any of the topics we discussed. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Take care, guys.